What is up? This is your LA in a minute, and I'm here at Dodger Stadium, which has brought me and millions of Dodger fans some fantastic memories. But it also holds heartbreak and tragedy for thousands of families that were displaced during the construction of Dodger Stadium. And in fact, right here on the third base side, there was an elementary school, Palo Verde Elementary School, that was buried during the construction of Dodger Stadium. This is a story that needs to be told. Let's get into it. It's important to note that in the modern era, the Dodgers have become very important to the development of a homegrown Latino identity in Los Angeles. The explosion of the Dodgers' Latino fandom is usually attributable to one moment, the signing of Fernando Valenzuela from Sonora, Mexico in 1979. Fernando was a humble and unhittable pitcher who won Cy Young and Rookie of the Year and led the Dodgers to a World Series title in 1981. According to the Dodgers in 2023, 54% of Dodger fans are Latino and 74% of those Latino fans are of Mexican descent. But the relationship of the Dodgers of Walter O'Malley and its Mexican-American fans had dark beginnings. By the early 1900s, communities had sprung up on the steep terrain of what was then known as Stone Quarry Hills. What eventually came to be called Chavez Ravine encompassed about 315 acres and had three main neighborhoods: Bishop, Palo Verde, and La Loma. These were neighborhoods. There were grocery stores, churches, elementary school. Many residents grew or raised their own food: produce, turkeys, goats, chickens. And many Mexican-American families, redlined and prevented from living in other neighborhoods in Los Angeles, established themselves in Chavez Ravine. But city officials decided that Chavez Ravine was a slum and an area ripe for redevelopment. They labeled the neighborhood blighted and came up with a plan for a massive public housing project known as Elysian Park Heights, which would include housing, homes, stores, and an elementary school. But remember, these were neighborhoods home to more than 1,000 families. To achieve the city's goals, they tried to force homeowners to sell, including with intimidating letters like this from the Housing Authority of the City of Los Angeles. The city told some Chavez Ravine homeowners that if they didn't sell, the city would just enact eminent domain and seize their property and force the residents out of their homes. A majority of the homeowners did leave one way or the other by 1953, but at that point, the Elysian Park Heights project fell apart. Newly elected Mayor Norris Polson opposed public housing, saying it was un-American, and the city ended up buying back the land at a much lower price from the Federal Housing Authority with the agreement that the city would use it for a public purpose. By 1957, only 20 families remained in Chavez Ravine. These were the ones that had fought the city's offers to buy their land and escaped eminent domain. Simultaneously in New York, Brooklyn Dodgers owner Walter O'Malley was having trouble getting funding for a new stadium in Brooklyn, so he had his sights set on the West Coast, specifically Los Angeles. A referendum was left to the voters in June of 1958 to trade 352 acres of land at Chavez Ravine to the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers, which in theory was considered a public project if he built a stadium there. The vote was narrowly approved. In the following year, the city began clearing land for what would become Dodger Stadium. On a day forever known as Black Friday to residents of Chavez Ravine, May 8th, 1959, bulldozers and sheriff's deputies showed up to forcibly evict the last few remaining families in Chavez Ravine. Sheriffs kicked open doors, movers hauled out furniture, deputies dragged people kicking and screaming from their own homes in Chavez Ravine. Places that had hosted weddings, quinceañeras, neighborhood get-togethers were reduced to rubble. Remaining families such as the Vargases, the Arechigas, the Montalvos were left with nothing to show for the homes that they had fought for and created so many memories in for generations. And as work began on Dodger Stadium, ravines were just filled in, including the complete burial of Palo Verde Elementary School underneath now what is foul territory outside the third baseline. 3 years later, at a cost of $23 million on April 10th, 1962, the Dodgers had their opening day at Dodger Stadium. And though the Dodgers have not formally acknowledged the people who were displaced from Chavez Ravine in the building of the stadium, a group called Buried Under the Blue does a fantastic job keeping the issue in the limelight, and it was started by two descendants of people that were forcefully evicted. And the book Stealing Home by Eric Nussbaum has a thorough, detailed, and chronological account of what led up to this unspeakable tragedy for the residents of Chavez Ravine before it became Dodger Stadium. So look, Dodger Stadium really is one of my favorite places in Los Angeles, but it's got a complex and tragic history, and we need to respect the sacred ground that we walk upon every day when we cheer for our Dodgers right here in Chavez Ravine. All right, LA, it's been a minute.